Welcome to the Puglia pattern sew along video. The first step is to sew all the ties, and you can do it two ways. The first option is to turn the ties inside out. So the first step is to fold the tie lengthwise, right sides together, to press and fold its short edges over to the wrong side by 1 centimeter. Then sew at 6 millimeters from the folded edge. Trim the seam allowance by half and turn the tie inside out using your preferred method. I like to use a loop turner. Option 2 is for you if you don't want or can't turn your ties inside out if your fabric is too thick, for example. Fold your tie lengthwise, wrong sides together and press, then fold the ends by 1 centimeter towards the wrong side. Then fold both raw long edges towards the middle, so towards the center crease, and press again. Then fold the tie in half to end up with a 75 millimeter wide tie with all raw edges enclosed. Press and sew along the folded edge. Alternatively, you can use a bias tape maker tool to fold the tie. So you should end up with one neck tie, one exterior tie, one interior tie, which is the shortest one, and 2 drawstring ties. So the second step is to hem all the raw edges of the front. So double fold the raw edge of the side seam towards the wrong side by 5 millimeters, press and pin. Then repeat for the short edge of the strap and edge stitch along the folds. Then repeat for the other front. Then we are going to sew the armholes bias. So place one of the armhole bias on the left front, so the wearer's left, right sides together, and at the strap's end, fold the bias over to the wrong side by 1 centimeter and finger press. Then sew at 7 millimeters. The bias will hang off the side seam, that's normal, do not trim it. And when sewing the bias, slightly pull on it to follow the curve. Then press the bias towards the seam allowance, making sure the seam allowance underneath is laying flat towards the bias. Then from the right side, understitch the bias to the seam allowance and make sure again that the seam allowance underneath is laying flat towards the bias when you're sewing it. Then from the wrong side, fold over the bias once to the stitch line and fold it once again on itself to encase its raw edge, and edge stitch the bias to the front. Then repeat for the right front. You'll start sewing the bias from the other side, so the side seam. Leave the bias hanging off by 2-3 centimeters and sew at 7 millimeter seam allowance. When arriving at the strap's end, a little bit before, stop sewing but leave your needle in and trim the bias so you only have 1 centimeter hanging off the strap. Fold that 1 centimeter on the bias and finish sewing. Then understitch the bias to the seam allowance, and then fold it over twice on itself to encase its raw edge and edge stitch. Then we're going to sew the neckline bias, so where the drawstring are going to go in. So place one of the neckline bias strips on the right front, so as worn, right sides together. At the strap's end, fold the short edge of the bias over to the wrong side by 1 centimeter and sew at 1 centimeter seam allowance. When arriving at the side seam, stop sewing but leave your needle in and trim the bias so you only have 1 centimeter hanging off the raw edge. Fold it on itself and finish sewing. From the right side, press the bias towards the seam allowance, making sure the seam allowance underneath is laying flat towards the bias. Then from the right side, understitch the bias to the seam allowance and make sure again that it is laying flat towards the bias when sewing. Then from the wrong side, fold over the bias right to the seam, and to encase its raw edge, fold it once more until you see the understitch you made in the previous step. Then edge stitch the bias to the front. The bias should have a finished width of approximately 1 centimeter. Then place the other neckline bias strips on the left front, right sides together, and repeat the same steps. So fold over the short raw edge by 1 centimeter to the wrong side, starting at the side seam, sew at 1 centimeter seam allowance. And when arriving at the strap's end, stop sewing a few centimeters before and trim the bias so you only have 1 centimeter hanging off. Fold it back on the bias and finish sewing. Then understitch, fold over twice, and edge stitch the bias to the front. Then insert the drawstring into the casing with a small safety pin, starting at the side seam. And when arriving at the strap, pull it out until 1 centimeter or so hangs off and sew across the casing to secure it, and then trim the excess. And to create a casing for the necktie, fold over the strap's ends to the wrong side by 1.5 centimeter and edge stitch. I like to use a piece of fabric to make sure that my presser foot is laying flat and not lower at the back, because that will make it harder for the sewing machine to start going. Then repeat for the other front. The next step is to sew the back elastic casing, and before folding over my casing, I like to mark the seam allowance on the right side of the fabric. So I mark it at 1 centimeter and 2 centimeter, and then I fold it over towards the wrong side and press and pin, and then edge stitch along the fold. Then cut the elastic to the required length and insert it until the other end reaches the entrance of the casing, and sew vertically across the casing to secure the elastic at around 3 millimeter seam allowance. Then keep feeding it through the casing, and when you reach the other side, sew across the same way to secure the elastic. And don't distribute the gathers yet, it'll be easier if they're all concentrated in the middle of the back for now. Then I did this, I forgot to do this, so I did it after, but you want to mark the side seam allowance at the top edge on the right side of the fabric at 1.2 centimeter on each side. Then we're going to assemble the fronts and the back. So place the back on the left front, aligning the side seams, wrong sides together. Align the bottom raw edges first, and at the top, the corner of the back will be higher than the corner of the front, and that's normal. So at 5 millimeter seam allowance, then press your seam open and again press towards the front. Flip your front and back right sides together and press the seam. Then insert the exterior tie, so the longer one, below the front seam and pin or clip to secure it in place. This is how the tie should be placed. Then sew at 7 millimeter to enclose the seam. Then top stitch the French seam on both sides across the bias, so it lays towards the front. Then repeat for the other front. Place the back on the right front, aligning the side seams, wrong sides together. Insert the interior tie, so the shorter one, right under the elastic casing. Pin and sew at 5 millimeter seam allowance. Then press your seam open and then again towards the front. Flip your front and back right sides together and press the seam again. Then sew at 7 millimeter to enclose the seam. Then press towards the front. And again, sew across the bias to secure the seam allowance underneath so it lays towards the front. Then we're going to hem the top or the dress. So fold over to the round side the bottom raw edge twice by 6mm and press. Then you can pin and edge stitch along the fold. And I like to use a rolled hem presser foot to do this because I find it so much easier and neater. Then the last step is to insert the necktie in the straps. Then I like to gather the drawstring from the bust level only, so the ruffles, the gathers are concentrated just at the bust and not higher on the neck, because that will make it look weird. And you'll likely have to take some time to adjust the side ties and the necktie to find the most comfortable fit. And here are some of my tester's versions that I hope will give you some inspiration for your next one. And if you share your make on Instagram, make sure to tag me at Golden Sky Patterns and use the hashtag Puglia Patterns so that I can see your beautiful creation and share it with everyone.